Read The Hunger Games instead. Divergent is not worth your time. Hello friends, my name is Lauren and welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a hot second since I've made a video, but exam season was crazy. I'm now back. But today, as you can tell from the title, we are here to talk about Divergent and if it has really stood the test of time. The last time I read Divergent, I looked like this, okay? I was rocking that Hunger Games necklace, Harry Potter t-shirt, and of course an iconic Divergent tattoo. So needless to say, our tastes have definitely changed since that photo. And since the 10th anniversary of Divergent originally releasing has actually just passed last month, and the special edition's coming out next month, I thought, you know, if I'm going to spend my hard-earned money on these books, are they really worth it? And so I decided to reread Divergent, hence the video you're now watching. And I actually intended it to be a just kind of casual reading vlog, but there was so much I had to say, so now we're gonna have a full-fledged review. If you've been keeping up in the general book community and just in general over the last many years since that photo I shared was originally taken, I feel the general opinion on Divergent, whether it's the books or the movies, has generally just gone downhill. As someone who has such fond memories of the series, I wanted to see if the first book, at least, held up to my old standards. And spoiler alert, they most definitely did not. And today we are going to talk about why that is. So, ladies and gentlemen, grab a snack, grab a drink, relax, and let's let the games begin. I know that's a Hunger Games reference, but honestly, read The Hunger Games instead. Divergent is not worth your time. I'm going to start off with a non-spoiler review for those of you that have not yet read the books or seen the movies, but first, let's talk about what Divergent is actually about. We are set in some kind of futuristic dystopian world in Chicago, and through years of research and various different reasons, they have found that sometimes people need to be separated in order to keep the peace. And hence that's where the 5 factions come in. Essentially, each faction is associated with some kind of different personality trait or value. So, for example, Abnegation is the selfless faction, Amity is the kind, peaceful faction, Candor is the honest faction, Dauntless represents bravery, and Erudite represents intelligence. So essentially, in order to become full-fledged members of the society, once a year, 16-year-olds are asked to choose which faction they would like to live in for the rest of their life, whether it's the one they grew up with their family, or if they would like to transfer to a different faction. And in this world, to help the teenagers make the best choice possible, the day before the test is when they take this aptitude test that's supposed to give them an answer of where they would best fit. We follow Tris Pryor, who grows up in Abnegation, which is the selfless faction, and when she takes her test results are not conclusive, meaning that she is divergent, which is being 2 or more of the factions. And this is very dangerous in this society because you don't fit the mold, you can't be controlled, etc., etc. And we follow her journey, what faction she chooses, and how she ends up impacting the rest of the world. Not to mention, there's some underlying tensions between some of the factions, which you'll learn more about if you read the book. That's a bit about the book, and honestly, before I even jump into any of my thoughts surrounding the book, I want to answer a pretty important question. If you wanted to explore or dive into the world of Divergent, should you read the book or should you watch the movie? And I'm strictly speaking on the first book and first movie only. I can't say anything for the rest of the series because I have not read the books in a while and I have not watched the other movies in a while. Hands down, no questions asked, the Divergent movie is like worlds better than the book. And I know that's just sad to say, because majority of the time the book is better, but the movie does it better. I'm sorry, just watch the movie. You'll save yourself a lot of pain, and it's actually going to be entertaining, I think. To me, I think the movie is fairly accurate of its Rotten Tomatoes score, which is I think a 40% for like critically how good it is, but like a 70% from the viewers. And honestly, as a movie, it's not the best thing I've ever seen, but compared to the book, it's definitely way better and a way more enjoyable experience to see the world and the characters. And there's some good scenes too, I will give it credit. And now the reason we're all here, let's discuss the book. I was so excited to reread this book, especially since it's been like 5 or 6 years since I read the book last, and it was just so disappointing. I will admit that I started off feeling optimistic. Of course, I thought I honestly might even give this book a 5 out of 5 stars. I thought it was going to be so nostalgic and so fun to revisit the worlds and some of my old favorite characters. However, the more I read, the less nostalgic I was feeling, and I was really able to get a sense of the book for what I think it is, and so hence I rated it not a 3, not a 2, but a 1 out of 5 stars, which is pretty sad for like one of my old favorite series. Honestly, once I got to like the 2/3 halfway mark, I started not enjoying the book anymore because of many problems I'll go over through the course of this video. So for that reason, honestly, if you want to reread it, I would just not recommend it. I think the biggest flaw in this book, and something that you just simply can't escape because it is just the whole book, it's the writing. The writing is so bad, and for that reason, like everything else that's even marginally good gets washed out because the author doesn't seem to know how to explain the story in an effective way, at least in my opinion. I felt it was very much telling and not showing throughout 99% of the book, and that just doesn't really make for a great reading experience because how am I supposed to infer anything? How am I supposed to draw conclusions? Guess plot twists? You really can't. Also tied probably with like my number one least favorite thing is just the characters. There's truthfully not a single character that I enjoyed in this book. And typically, you know, if there's some side characters that I like, if there's some romance that I like, this book would at least be a 2 out of 5 stars, but as you can tell from my rating, there was none of that. The romance was dry and kind of gave me insta-love vibes, which is just like the worst romance trope. Don't at me, I stand by that opinion. And the plot was just kind of like all over the place, and the way the plot was like written out, again going back to the writing, was just so like, here's the information you need, or this character only exists because it needs to do something for the plot. Like, it was pretty bad. I definitely found this book to be very plot focused, and since I'm definitely more of a character driven person, that was a big problem for me. And not only that, the writing sucked explaining the plot was all over the place, and the characters just felt like props for the plot to take place. So cohesively, just was not a great vibe. For all those reasons and more, I just don't think this book is something I will really ever enjoy. I may even read the rest of the trilogy just for laughs, honestly, at this point. So let me know if you guys would be interested in more of my thoughts with that. But for that reason, this book just was not it. Don't mind me changing my shirt halfway through the video, but now I'm going to be jumping into the spoiler section of this video, so if you have yet to read the book or watch the movie and you don't want to hear any major details, I would recommend stopping now. So I'm going to just jump straight on into things, talking about the first third of the book. Honestly, I think this was my favorite part of the book, not because it was like great, it was just like the least bad compared to like the rest of the book. I definitely think towards the end, like so many plot things were just thrown at you in like such a weird way. Like, it was not a vibe, did not like it. But the first part did suck the least, I will say that. Honestly, the book was pretty solid until like chapter 2. If that's not saying something, I don't know what is. But when the like aptitude faction test starts the day before the choosing ceremony is when like my first problem arose. So this test is essentially like some magical serum thing that like puts you in a simulation that helps you to like decide where your brain naturally will fit into and like which faction you will naturally be drawn to. And for a test so important for keeping the peace in the society, tell me why it's like the simplest thing I've ever seen. Like, a recap of the test. Essentially, you're given 2 options. You pick cheese or a knife. And then you have an angry dog approaching you. Okay, that's part 1. And part 2, I don't know if this was just for Triss or everyone. She was on a bus and some angry man comes up to her and it's like, do you know this guy? And she was like, in her brain, like, yes, I do. And he was like, if you tell me who he is, you can save my life. And she was like, no, I don't know who he is. And that was the whole second part. Like, you'd think it's a little deeper than that. You know, you'd think it would be some kind of psychological, more in-depth thing, or it would explain why these questions are important, but it doesn't. And since especially Erudite created this serum that everyone uses, and Erudite also created the like mind-destroying, controlling serum that Dauntless used like later on in the book, the fact that they made like this one so intense and this one like so unexplainably like lame, I don't understand. Additionally, I want to talk about choices, and something that is very much emphasized on the book itself is the slogan, one choice can transform you. The back says, one choice decides your friends, one choice defines your beliefs, one choice determines your loyalties forever, one choice can transform you. So it seems, you know, based off that information, that choices really matter in this book. And I will give credit where credit is due. I did think the choosing ceremony, dare I say, the scene was interesting to read. You didn't hear it from me. But that one choice seems to be like the only thing the book does well. Like, I'll try to explain. Like, yes, I had a few problems with the test part of it, but the idea of choosing a faction and that whole ceremony I thought was very interesting. And like I said, dare I say, well done. But every part after that, once she chooses Dauntless, it's like none of her choices seem to really impact the plot, which I'm actually going to get into in just a second, but it really just annoyed me further, knowing that the whole book places so much emphasis on this one choice that takes place in, I think, chapter 3, when there's so many other chapters that are just so bland. Jumping into a few characters now, we're going to start off with our main two characters, Triss and Four. Like I think I already said, these characters, like all of them, are pretty flat, pretty boring, and if not flat, just not enjoyable to read about. So Triss and Four, I'll talk later about them as a couple. Atrocious. As individual characters, you'd think they'd have some redeeming qualities. Not really. Not even Triss. And we spend the whole book, the whole like 500 pages in her head. Honestly, I'm half convinced that Veronica Roth was like, okay, I need to write a male character. Let me take the stereotypical male traits, like, I don't know, physically fitness, assertiveness, and like plug them into a character, and that's Tobias. That's literally Tobias. And then she was like, okay, I gotta write my main female character, so let me take the stereotypical female traits, plug them into Triss. Oh wait, strong female characters are in style right now, let's add that into her character. And that was basically how they were made. Let's start off with Triss. Number one, the simplest one, she's just straight up boring, okay? She is boring to read about. And it's her book. It's her book. She should not be boring. And honestly, I don't even know what her development as a character was. And that just annoys me so much. You know, I believe her arc was supposed to be like, she doesn't know where she belongs, and then by the end, she knows more about herself and where she belongs. But that doesn't really work because the ending scene is her on a train going who knows where. So then I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's her coming into her like divergentness, you know? Like she's trying so hard to just be one thing, but then she's like, no, I am many things, and it's cool. Like, I'm so confused by what her arc was supposed to be. And even those two options aren't even great, you know? So for that reason, I did not even like following her because I didn't even understand why we were really following her. And like I kind of said before, choices are so much, they're just emphasized so much on the front and back of the book. So you'd think choices matter, especially Triss's choices, you know, since she is the protagonist. But after she chooses Dauntless, it's like, why? Just why, you know? I feel the plot of the book really wouldn't have changed all that much depending on what Triss's choices were and what choices she made. Because it seemed like the only reason the story existed was to get to that like war on abnegation part. And that was gonna happen regardless of what Triss did. And I guess she kind of like stopped it at the end. But like, it was such a lame lead up. It was so lame, you know? If that was the whole point of getting to her story, like sprinkling in that strong female character stuff just because she could shoot a gun, very pathetic. I'm sorry. She literally could have done anything and the story like barely would have changed. I don't like it. Tobias, I feel like he barely talked in the book, and as like the main male protagonist in the book, like you should talk a little bit more. I feel like I don't care about him. I feel like he doesn't really have a personality. It's just like he's the brooding, dark-haired, love interest guy in the book. It's like we've been there, done that before. Give me some substance. He feels, like I said before, very typically male character, strong and assertive, and can be mean at times. Like, the only significant thing I know about him is that he has 4 fears, hence the nickname Four. Genius, you know? Surprisingly, she had to spell that one out to us as well, but whatever. I don't care about him at all. He's very flat. Triss and him don't work well together either. For that reason, not a fan. And I'll briefly touch on the side characters, but like, it's not even worth it. It's not even worth it. Like, as I touch on the side characters a little bit, I'm also going to touch on a few plot points because I think they're relevant. Number one, going back to Tobias, there was a line towards like, I think page 370 something, where a plot point is revealed about like the war on abnegation gonna happen because Tobias happens to be good with computers. So you're telling me the entire book was leading up to this war just for Tobias to be like, happens to be good with like computers. He's like Two things you should know about me. The first is that I am deeply suspicious of people in general, and the second is that I am unexpectedly good with computers. A few weeks ago, before training started, I was at work and I found a way into the Dauntless secure files. Apparently we are not as skilled as the erudite are at security, and what I discovered looked like war plans. So literally the only reason the war plan gets revealed to us is because Tobias is unexpectedly good at computers, and he just was like la-di-da-di-da and found war plans. I'm just disappointed. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. Another plot piece, and also character. Peter. His only point in the whole book was just to be the evil guy that no one likes. His character was nothing. He was just rude and evil, and he shoved a butter knife in, what was his name, Edward's eye, and then he tried to kill Tris amongst two other guys as well. Leading into my next point, Peter, Albert, and Drew basically all tried to take Tris and kill her. And while they did that, they were like basically sexually assaulting her because they were like touching her body and whatever. It was really uncomfortable to read. And I feel like it's barely addressed in the book that that really happened. And it seemed like she was just like fine afterwards, more or less. And two even worse things kind of happened from that near-death experience. One, Tobias happens to be walking by at that exact moment. And he beats up the guys, whatever. He's talking to Tris afterwards. And it honestly seemed like he didn't really care about her until she was like, they touched me. And then he was like all serious all of a sudden, like he cared and was like that protector and like this. I'm like, why don't you care about her in the first place? If you said you liked her from the beginning, shouldn't you show more caring? I don't know. Secondly, Will. I liked him as a character. He was kind of funny. But then he started defending Albert's behavior just because he's like desperate. That does not sit right with me. Additionally, Triss's only female friend is Christina, and they are so often pinned against each other various different times in the plot, and it's like, are we really scrounging for this material that we need to turn the only two females against each other? Like, why is that? And just the whole ending with the reveal of the war, like I said before, it's like Triss gets into Divergent, she goes to kiss Tobias, she does, and then as soon as that happens, she like connects all the dots and she's like, wait, Tobias, I think there's gonna be a war on abnegation. Where did this come from? At the end, Tobias is like about to kill Triss because he's in that mind control serum, and then she does that whole like, Tobias, it's me. Listen to me. And then he's like, fine. You know, like, it seemed like there was just like plot convenience thrown everywhere, and she called it a day. You know, honestly, there's just so much like bad stuff in this book. Not like bad, but just like, why am I spending my time reading this? There are so many better books. Find something else to read, you know? And I'm gonna talk a little bit about the writing now. I mentioned that a bit earlier, but oh my god, it was atrocious. It was atrocious. Like I said, I didn't like the plot points, the pacing kind of sucked, there were flawed characters, but like the worst of all of it was like the writing, okay? Because you literally can't escape the writing no matter what, you know? Maybe you don't like a certain character, you just don't read that part, you know? You don't like the pacing, you skim paragraphs. Writing, that's literally what the book is, you can't escape it. This book is almost entirely written by like telling you what's happening and not letting you figure it out for yourself. Here are some examples I'm gonna read. Christina is a candor, which means she tells the truth before she transferred over into Dauntless. And instead of her just saying like truthful or blunt things, she's like, sorry, am I being rude? She asks, I'm just used to saying whatever is on my mind. It's like, really, you couldn't have let us figure that out for ourselves to like understand what the faction is like, how people who transfer actually have to change themselves because of how they grew up. No, she had to explain this to us through the dialogue. Another thing, Triss is recapping a dream she had. I dreamt that Peter tied me to a chair and asked me if I was divergent. I answered no, and he punched me until I said yes. I woke up with wet cheeks. The imagery. Wow. Another quote is that since Triss is divergent, she is both selfless and intelligent, apart from being brave, is that the author really feels the need to like sprinkle in that throughout this book, right? As she should. This book is about being more than one thing. But the way she does it, it's like so obvious that she has a few lines here and there just to show that Triss is actually selfless and Triss is actually smart. For example, maybe she's right. I've already proven myself today. I do not want to be greedy. Selfless. Then to show that Triss is smart, she says, simulations aren't real, they pose no real threat to me, so logically I shouldn't be afraid of them. But my reaction is visceral. Like, way to use those fancy words in there, like, we get it, you're smart, okay? We get it. Honestly, like, even just talking about those two past sentences, I feel like being divergent isn't even really the point of the book. Even though we follow Triss, who's divergent, the book is called Divergent. Like, the only time it's ever explained why being divergent is bad, it's because, like, you can't be controlled because you think different. And I understand that, but I feel like they could have spent so much more time explaining this topic rather than hiding it under the rug or giving like an info dump towards the end. I feel it could have just been written so much better and incorporated so much better into the story, which it's not. So I'm hoping at this point we understand my frustrations. You know, I don't really like following Triss or reading about any of the other characters. Honestly, the only redeemable character was like Triss's mom, who then started getting really info dumpy towards the end, so I wasn't a fan of that. I don't like the plot. I felt the plot was very poorly written and integrated, and it was just kind of told to us what was going on, and so much plot convenience occurred, which I can't even get into more than I already have. It's just done so much throughout the story, and just the writing, you can't escape bad writing, you know? So for that reason, up until this point, not a fan. But wait, there's more. Oh, I was really rooting for this not to happen either, but guess what? Everyone's favorite trope occurred. The not like other girls trope. Yay. I had high hopes that this book was not going to fall into this trope, and honestly there was like a few sentences here and there, the first part and like the middle, but then towards the end I just lost all hope. I was like, what is this? And let me give you a few examples. Number one, she pulled the classic, "You aren't going to be able to make me pretty, pick me girl" line. Then pinning Christina and Triss, the only two female friendships we really see, against each other. This scene I actually did like, I will say, more or less kind of sort of, is like the capture the flag scene with the Ferris wheel. I thought that was fun to read about. However, then the scene was ruined because Triss, who rightfully deserved to get the flag at the end, Christina was like, "Triss, you've had enough victories today, like, let me take this victory here." And then she takes the flag from Triss, which was going to be Triss's big moment to like share with everyone. And I was like, why are we pinning them against each other? Because like a few chapters later, Christina and Triss make up and it's all dandy, whatever. And again, literally Triss is like, I want to forget the past. And then they move forward. Another thing, pinning against each other again. Christina's like, that's nice of him, speaking about four, and this is Triss's internal dialogue to herself. I still feel rattled by what she said, half confused by the idea of four being nice, and half wanting to punch her for no apparent reason. And then she's talking to Tobias later, and she's like, I'm not trying to be self-deprecating, I just don't get it. I'm younger, I'm not pretty, don't pretend, you know I'm not ugly, but I'm certainly not pretty. It's just like, are we really going to say this right now? Oh my god. Literally so many times, at least twice, okay, Triss gets away with things because she's played off as, and I quote, a silly little girl. She literally leaves her faction, which you're not allowed to do, to visit her brother, which you're not allowed to do. She comes back. The excuse her and Tobias gave was that Tobias rejected her and she was sad, so she left. And literally the words, just a silly little girl, were used so many times, and it just angered me so much because, like I said, it was like Veronica Roth tried to make her just a stereotypical female character, but then throw in like the fact that she can use a gun and like called it a day. Where's the growth? Where's the caring? And speaking of Triss and Tobias, I'm going to talk about my last problem with this book, which is normally my favorite part of like dystopian or fantasy books, and it's the romance. And the romance was so bad. It was cringy. It felt so forced, and I didn't like it. Like I said before, taking the stereotypical guy, stereotypical girl, and putting them into a romance together is very, very bland and boring to read about. But best of all, it almost felt, not exactly, but it basically felt like an insta-love romance, which to me kind of sucks. Triss is drawn to him for some apparent reason from the beginning, and we find out later on that Tobias kind of felt the same way to her. And it's like, I get that there's that like love at first sight kind of thing, but it just feels so forced, and I hate reading about it in books for that exact reason. Now, also, let me read you some lines for this amazing romance throughout the book. This is Tobias talking to Triss. You think my first instinct is to protect you because you're small, or a girl, or stiff, but you're wrong. My first instinct is to push you until you break, just to see how hard I have to press. But I resist it. There's more. He's then trying to, play off the silly little girl thing, And here's two lines that just so beautiful. He's yelling at her in front of everyone and he's like, well, what the hell was that, Stiff? Get yourself together. This is pathetic. So then she runs away to Erudite to go visit her brother. When she comes back, and like I said before, plays it off like I'm just a silly little girl. And he's like to her, I didn't think it would affect you in that way. Sometimes I forget I can hurt you, that you are capable of being hurt. I feel like her intent writing this was supposed to show that she's super strong and growing as a character, but to me, all I read that as is Tobias does not see Triss as a person, because everyone's capable of getting hurt, which I don't quite understand. And then it gets even better, just to go right off of that one. Essentially, one of Triss's fears in her fear landscape is the fact that she is scared of intimacy with someone else, and that makes sense growing up in Abnegation, where that was always kind of like shunned upon, like you don't really do that in front of other people. And so when it's revealed to Tobias, this is one of her fears. She was hesitant to bring this up, and she was like, is this the only reason you're talking to me? And he's like, what, sex? You know, if that was all I wanted, you probably wouldn't be the first person I would go to. To which Triss is rightfully kind of hurt by that, you know? And then he's like, okay, fine, I'm sorry I said that. What I meant was that you aren't like that, which I knew when I met you, which ties back into that whole insta-love trope I don't like, and also the fact that, you know, he doesn't see her in that way, so like, but why does he think of girls lesser than like that, but puts Triss on a pedestal like that? I don't know, it just does not sit right with me, the fact that he said that. Like, I understand it to a certain extent. To me, it seems like he wouldn't go to Triss for that, because he values her, but he doesn't value like other girls. And there are just so many instances of insta-love trope and random lines like that and stuff that just doesn't sit right with me. Like, I don't like them together. I don't like Tobias really all that much. He felt very boring, and just putting them together was like the last thing I wanted. And so for all those reasons and more, there's just so much that goes on in this book. I know I'm missing some stuff, but those are the main things that stuck out to me that just made this book so hard to read, not enjoyable, and has really tainted my thoughts of the book. I will say though that the movie was still enjoyable because I did watch it yesterday, and I did have a fun time with it, but the book, not a fan. So for all of those reasons and more, I did not like this book. It was not something for me. I would not recommend it, but if you want to watch the movie, consume the story that way, but the book just was not it. It was not it. If you have any questions for me surrounding this book, if you want to talk more about it, be sure to leave me a comment down below, and I will be happy to talk about this book with you guys. I honestly hope people liked it more than me, because, you know, books are meant to be enjoyed. But this was just a little bit sad. With that though, I will be wrapping up this video, hopefully having a more consistent posting schedule now that I don't have 5 classes to worry about. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and like I said, comment down below your thoughts on Divergent, if you liked it, if you didn't. Anyways, I will see you all very, very soon in my next video. So until then, bye.